Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Faster Law webinar series. Today, we are doing episode 14, Common Tech Mistakes Made by Law Firms. So as always, I am your host. My name is Andrew Suter, and I provide direct support for Faster Law. So normally I would be taking you through the webinar, but today we actually have a guest presenter. It's Tony Valenti. He is our founder and lead programmer, so he will actually be covering today's topic. And before I hand it over to him, I do just want to mention, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to type them into the chat box at the bottom of your window. You can type the questions in at any time, but we will hold all of the questions until the end of the webinar. So, type them in as they come to you, but we'll push them off and get them answered at the end. So, like I said, today we're doing common tech mistakes made by law firms. And what we've done is really we work with a lot of law firms here at Faster Law. And over time, we've started to see some things that work and some things that, not so much don't work. So we've just kind of compiled some best practices here. And I'll actually let Tony take it from here. So Tony, you can take it away. And make sure you unmute your microphone if I think you're muted right now if you're talking.
There we go. Sorry about that. All right. So yes, as Andrew said, we work with a lot of different law firms, and one of the things that we see is that there's a number of different types of mistakes that law firms across the board make. We see some of these mistakes in small law firms. We see them in big law firms. We also see a lot of firms that get some of these things right. But what we wanted to do was compile kind of a quick-hitting list of things that we see law firms doing that can be done better. The three main categories this falls into are things with their computers, things with the communications, and just general process things. All right, Andrew, next slide, please. So the first thing that we see sometimes is that law firms just get their staff garbage computers. And we harp on this a lot. The number one reason that we see law firms run into technology problems is because they're using just bad computers. We joke about it, but it's true. You see the $500 an hour attorney who buys a $300 computer from Walmart for his paralegal, and everybody wonders why that computer isn't working very well. And the answer is it's a $300 computer from Walmart. We generally recommend having what's called an i7 processor, 16 gigs of RAM, and a solid state hard drive. Those are nothing that's out of the ordinary. Those are our typical specs that you'll see in just about any kind of business class computer. So if you're ever looking for a new system, just make sure you get something that's at least that good. That's kind of the beginning point for business class computers. The next mistake that we see law firms make has to do with implementing the wrong amount of security. It's good to be secure. It's good to take appropriate measures. It's good to have your antivirus installed and running on your computer. But we've seen firms that might be running 4 different copies of antivirus throughout their firm. Every user is running a different antivirus platform, and some users might actually be using multiple. I saw somebody the other day that was running McAfee, Norton, and I think it was AVG, all on the same computer, and none of them were updating. They had turned updates off on all of them, so they thought they were being really secure by running 3 different antivirus solutions at the same time, but they were actually just slowing down their computer, and actually they were less secure because they didn't have any updates going on for those platforms. For most law firms, simply using the built-in Windows Defender that comes as part of Windows 10 is perfectly good for most firms. The next thing, and this is something that we've seen a number of firms moving away from, so it's a good thing. But occasionally we see firms that are using remote terminals to do all of their work. They'll have a server that's either in their office or on somebody's cloud, and everybody will remotely connect to the server to do all of their work. Generally speaking, those servers are kind of antiquated. People end up having technology and performance problems because something as simple as browsing the internet is having to go actually across the internet twice. Stay away from remote terminals if you at all can. On that point, though, if you need remote access to your work computer, something we've seen a lot of people doing because of coronavirus, don't use VPNs, use TeamViewer. TeamViewer is an excellent piece of software. We use it at FasterLaw all the time. Anytime you do a screen share with Andrew or I, it's all running through TeamViewer. TeamViewer makes it really easy to remotely connect from your home computer into your office computer. We definitely highly recommend that. The last thing as it relates to computers are bad IT support. We have seen law firms who literally in a one-on-one conversation with their IT company said, well, we don't really like to fix the problems because that actually ends up costing us money. The IT firm was basically billing by the hour, and every time the law firm had a problem, that was more money in the IT guy's pocket. I'm going to hit some of these questions, I guess, as they come in. I know normally we hold the questions till the end, but Max Elliott asked, why use TeamViewer instead of a VPN? And the problem with VPNs, anybody who's used a VPN will tell you that they never ever work when you want them to. When you're working with a VPN, 9 times out of 10, people don't use a VPN on a day-to-day basis. And then when they go to do it, they didn't have the software installed on their computer. They didn't have the hardware plugged in right. Something in the configuration had changed. There's always one of about 1,000 different reasons why a VPN isn't going to work for you when you want it to. With TeamViewer, you just install it, you enter an ID and password on whichever computer you're accessing it from, and you're basically doing a screen share right then. So it's a little bit of a different experience than a VPN. A VPN connects you into a network, whereas TeamViewer connects you into a computer. But TeamViewer is a lot easier to use, and it works every time, as opposed to a VPN, which basically never works when you want it to. Andrew, would you go ahead and go to the next slide? All right. Also, Andrew, if there's anything that I'm saying, if you have anything you want to add to it, feel free to do that as well.
Okay. There actually is one thing about the IT support. Just to clarify, they didn't bill hourly. They were actually a subscription IT service, so they were paid monthly, regardless of the amount of support that they provided. So when someone came to them with a problem, they had already collected their fee for the month, and if they had to provide any support, that was basically, hours that were being worked for an amount that they had already collected. So that's kind of why they were losing money when they actually helped out. So that's an example of that IT service.
I actually had a different experience, so I guess that's 2 strikes right there. One for the one gotcha. that you had, and one for mine.
Gotcha. Sorry, I thought you were talking about that one, but I'll let you carry on here.
Okay. So the next section that I was wanting to kind of chat about a little bit is common communication mistakes that we see law firms make. The first has to do with email addresses. It's pretty common for law firms to have a lot of changeover in their staffs. Paralegals leave. Receptionists leave, people come and go. It's pretty normal. Never, ever delete an email address, though. It's one of the worst things that you can do for your customer retention when a client is trying to reach out to somebody at your firm and they're getting this email address doesn't exist anymore. What we recommend doing is, instead of deleting the email address, either assign that email address to somebody else if it's a general like office at or receptionist at email address, or forward that email address to somebody else in your office. So if Bob Smith at your office receives an email and Bob Smith doesn't work there anymore, maybe the email is going to another attorney in your firm who who services the same practice areas, or maybe it's going to the reception. It should be going somewhere other than a black hole. The next thing is toll-free numbers. We've seen some firms, even smaller firms, that are using toll-free telephone numbers for the numbers that they want their clients to call. And a question I have for people who do this is, why do you have a toll-free number? Nobody pays long distance charges anymore today. Long distance charges are pretty much a thing of the past unless it's international. But toll-free numbers do charge your law firm extra money. So when you have a toll-free telephone number, you're basically paying extra that you don't have to basically get the same number of calls. The next thing that we've seen is robotic call trees. Lots of times when a firm is getting started with an online voice over IP service for their law firm, there will be kind of an automatic robot that will come in and it'll say, "Thank you for calling, the law firm of John Smith." No firm should leave that there for any longer than half an hour. Get your phone number, and the very first thing you should do is go in and change that introduction message on your call tree to have a human voice on it. It can even be you, the attorney. It doesn't matter. Just absolutely get rid of the robot and have a recording of a person on there. The next thing is, once you have that call tree on there, actually do use a call tree. We've seen a number of firms who actually end up really overspending because of the way that they manage their phones. Some firms, you'll call their number and you'll go directly to a receptionist. That receptionist is making whatever their salary is or their hourly rate, and they're spending a lot of time answering the phone. So you're having to pay for that receptionist. And then if the receptionist is on another call or busy, that phone call is usually being routed to an answering service, who now you're having to also pay to answer their phone. And the reason that's happening is because instead of sending the customer to a call tree where they could press 1 to talk to John, 2 to press the Sally, 3 to speak to Jim, we're putting that receptionist in the middle. Putting receptionists in the middle of call trees is never a good thing. Send people to a call tree, let them choose who they want to talk to, and then let that person service them directly. It'll make your customers happier. It'll make your receptionist more efficient, allow her to work on other tasks, and just streamline the processes. Related to that, when it comes to having people reach out to the members of your firm, always make sure that your employees have extension numbers that people can dial to reach them, and make sure that those extension numbers are included in your email signatures. When somebody's calling your firm to speak with either you or a paralegal, you want them to be able to get to the right place as efficiently as possible. Every minute that somebody spends speaking to your receptionist, telling them that they want to talk to you, is a minute that you're paying for that you really don't have to be. That receptionist or your paralegal, whoever is taking that call, could be working on a much more important task. Related to that, scheduling software is an absolute must for pretty much every law firm. Whether you're using something like Wix or Calendarly or any number of other software programs, what these pieces of software do is they'll actually link up with your calendar so that you can block off times in your calendar so that if people want to talk to you, they can basically schedule an appointment with you. It's very similar to what we do with Faster Law. Whenever you're looking for support, you don't simply just call in and expect to talk to somebody. You pick a time, we call you at the time, we're going to make sure we get you taken care of. The scheduling software is good. for firms because it lets your clients know when you're going to call them, and it lets you know when the client's looking to have that call. So it really allows you to manage your schedule and make sure that you're not trying to help, 3 people out in the same 15-minute window just because they all happen to call you during their lunch hour. The last thing on communications is just make sure you have a good website. It doesn't have to be a perfect website. It doesn't have to be an amazing website, but have one that's decent, that kind of speaks to what it is that you and your firm are doing. We've actually seen a good number of firms that after a split off, the new firms might go for months or even a year or two without having any website at all. And then when they get one, it's absolutely mediocre. You know what? Your website is your presentation to the world on your business. I know that y'all have heard 1,000 times about have a good website. Have a good website. Andrew, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. The last couple things that I kind of want to mention are first around technology training. We've seen so many law firms that have challenges with their technology because the people at the firm were so smart that they believed that they didn't need the training. If training is offered, even if you think you're probably not going to need it, even if it sounds like it's below you, I always encourage you, go to the training. If you have to, just move it to a screen, watch the webinar in the background and just listen in. I got a message from Susan that says that you lost my audio.
I am still able to hear you. Is everyone else able to hear? Max can hear. Susan, it might be an issue with the audio on your end. I wonder if maybe if you're using like a headset or something, if it turned off, or it might be something in Zoom itself. Either way,
hey, Andrew, if Susan lost audio, she's not able to hear us.
Yep, that's a good point. Give me 1 second here. Tony, you can continue. I'll type a message here.
Yeah, I'll continue. I'll let you work with Susan. So as I was saying, when it comes to the technology training, even if it's like a webinar that you can just put into the background and just listen while you're working on other things, I always recommend hitting the technology training because you're going to learn things that are going to make your firm so much faster, whether it's you individually or the staff that you have working for you. A lot of firms, they kind of get in a pattern of how they operate and how they work. And as a result of that, that's a good thing, but as a result of that, sometimes people just aren't continually improving or continually modernizing how they are working on things. So always make sure that people are going to the training. It'll make your firm run better. And the last thing is automate and standardize software and processes. We've seen some firms where everybody has their own different version of Microsoft Word that they're using, and some people aren't even using Word. Some people are using WordPerfect. It doesn't necessarily matter what software your firm chooses or what processes your firm follows, but standardize those. Make sure that everybody's doing the same thing the same way every time. If somebody wants to use WordPerfect and the rest of your office is using Microsoft Word, tell them to learn a new software package. It's worth it for your firm to have everybody standardized so that you're not having to cater to different nuances here or there in your firm. So those were the main things that I had wanted to kind of talk about and overview quickly for you. Are there any questions that anybody would like to have answered?
While we're waiting on that, there is just one thing I want to touch on the processes part there. Tony had mentioned WordPerfect and Microsoft Word, and my personal recommendation, like Tony said, it shouldn't really matter either way as long as everyone is using the same. My personal recommendation would be to go with Microsoft Office applications like Microsoft Word. at one point way back, I think WordPerfect, was probably a little bit more functional than Microsoft Word, but it seems like, to me anyway, that Microsoft Word has really, I guess, just expanded and become more functional and really passed up WordPerfect. And kind of to this point, as far as like standardizing the processes goes, I have worked with firms where even on different versions of Microsoft Word. So some people will be using WordPerfect, some people would be using Word 2010, some would be on 2016. And when that happens, different users are having different problems. And it's almost always the ones that are using the outdated Word program or WordPerfect. So just from my personal experience helping out law firms, I would definitely recommend always using the most recent version of Microsoft Word, or any Office program.
Yep. And the same is true even with non-Office programs. If you're going to be using screen sharing software like TeamViewer, TeamViewer is our recommendation, but TeamViewer is good. GoToMyPC is okay. There's a lot of platforms that are out there, but you shouldn't have a different remote access piece of software installed on each computer in the office. It should be the same one across the board.
All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and pause here for just a few seconds and see if any questions come in. There was one thing from earlier regarding toll-free numbers. Max had mentioned she has international clients. So Tony, would that be a situation in which it would be a good idea to have a toll-free number?
You know what? I would take a look at that, but I'm not actually sure that would necessarily matter if your international clients are outside the continental United States. I have to double check on it, but I think that somebody calling a toll-free number from a 1-800 number from England is still going to pay international charges on that phone call.
Okay. And we'll pause for just a moment here to see if any other questions come in. All right, so nothing coming in yet. I will, oh, never mind, there's one here. It says, can you reconcile technology with the human touch need? Tony, any thoughts on that?
I don't understand the question.
All right, would you care to elaborate on that? I think what I'm getting out of it is it that people prefer to like meet in person, and could you use technology to bypass that? Is that kind of what you mean by that question, Max? I'll allow a moment here for a response.
Okay, as it relates to telephone calls, excellent question. So you're absolutely right. People like to hear real people, and they like to talk with real people. But what they like better than talking with a real person is talking with a real person who can help them. And in a lot of situations, what you find is that when you put a receptionist on the front lines and you have the receptionist basically recording voicemails for the attorney, the customers are doing that, but they're not happy with that. They would much rather leave a voicemail and get a call back from the attorney in half an hour or an hour, or schedule an appointment and talk with the attorney in half an hour or an hour, then leave a voicemail with a receptionist who crossed their fingers, remembered to write it down and send an email to the attorney. Some receptionists are very good and always get those messages through, but the human touch is definitely important. But the human touch is, people want a human touch from a human that can help them, not just any random human.
All right, and then it looks like we got another question here. It says, how often, if at all, are firms using video technology with clients as an alternative to in-person meetings, and what are you seeing as problems?
So that's something we've seen a small handful of customers that have, actually not even customers, a small handful of companies that are kind of experimenting with video calls. And I think that right now, because of the coronavirus situation, I think that that's a really good solution to be looking at, whether you're using Zoom for that, or you're happening to use FaceTime or Skype. I think that any of those solutions are good. I think they're good because that helps actually make that human touch even more real. A human voice is good. A human face is even better. So I haven't really seen very many problems on that yet, just because that's kind of a very new thing. But I think that there's certainly some value in doing that.
Yeah, especially like Tony mentioned right now, with everyone working remotely, it's become almost necessary. I think in general, a lot of people prefer to meet in person. So my personal feelings on this are in-person meetings would probably be best if possible. But I also haven't encountered anyone mentioning any problems with video meetings. So especially right now, I think that would be a good way to meet with people.
Yeah, one of the good things, I guess, about coronavirus is pretty much everybody and their grandmother is learning how to do a video meeting these days. Even my church this past Sunday, they, for the very first time, that we had 80-some families connecting in to watch over Zoom, and a lot of those people had never used Zoom before. So everybody's learning how to do video meetings.
All right, and we have run out of questions for now, so we'll pause for just a moment here. There is another question from Max. It says, do you think we should advise clients in video conferencing about client confidentiality?
So unless you're recording the video conference, then I think that you're probably just the same as any other, in-person meeting, except you're doing it telephonically. I would suggest advising your clients about confidentiality over video conferencing the same way you would over a telephone call, and to the same degree you would over an in-person meeting.
All right, and we'll pause for just a moment here to see if any other questions come in. And I will mention, if you guys have microphones and it's easier for you to just voice your question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask that way. You don't necessarily have to type into the chat box there.
Yes, to answer your question, Max, yes, if somebody is doing a video conference from home, you might want to advise them, say, look, anybody who's listening in is going to hear this. So if you're going through a divorce and your ex is in the other room, or your soon-to-be ex is in the other room, you might want to go to someplace a little bit more private.
Yep, and just to clarify, that question was if anyone is in the house, their confidentiality might be waived. And we do have, I guess I'm not sure if this is a comment or a question, but it says in some states, if you're recording video or audio, you must get consent from those being recorded. So whatever your normal practices would be for that sort of thing, if you're recording, definitely follow those same practices. Clark, there's an off-topic question here. How do you drop your screen so you can access the desktop? At the top of the screen, there's a little drop-down, and you should have a button that says, I think it says, like, exit full screen mode. And you should be able to click that, and it'll put it into windowed mode. And we'll pause here for just a moment to see if more questions come in. The third computer feature. So the question is, what was the third computer feature? Are you talking about the third item on the computers tab here?
Remote terminal. Is that what you're referring to?
Oh, gotcha. So the specs for a computer. Max, I'll send you a link to an article that we have on this, but just to reiterate, we recommend an Intel i7 processor or better, at least 16 gigs of RAM, and a solid state drive for storage. But I will send you a link to an article that we have on that after the webinar is over here.
And that's our recommendation there. You know, if you're getting a new computer or a computer is substantially below that, we definitely recommend a replacement system. I was working with a firm the other day that no joke, it was a 2 gigabytes of RAM. It was running Windows 7, and it had like it didn't even have an i processor in it. It had a Celeron processor, which that's I don't even know what to compare that to. That's what's like in an old school Game Boy almost.
Yeah, actually, even earlier today, I was connected to a computer that had, I didn't look at the processor because the processor seemed to be keeping up, but they had 4 gigs of RAM and they had just an old hard drive, and it was taking, it took like 3 or 4 minutes to pull up Chrome. We tried to run Faster Suite, and I actually got off the call before it even loaded. It may have taken 30 plus minutes to load Faster Suite. So, I mean, computer specs, the resources available on your computer are very, very important for making sure that you can actually effectively do everything that you need to do for work.
Mm-hmm. And as an attorney who's paying your staff, do you want to really be paying your staff to do work, or do you want to be paying them to wait on the computer?
All right, and we'll pause here just for a moment to see if any more questions come in. All right, and nothing so far, so I'll go ahead and move on. If you guys do continue to think of questions, feel free to continue to type them in. But I'll go ahead and start covering some of this wrap-up stuff here. So what else? Number one here, if you're not already using Faster Suite, go ahead and install a trial of it. We do offer a free and fully featured 7-day trial of Faster Suite. That's available at fasterlaw.com/download. So that'll allow you to test out everything that Faster Suite does for 7 days. If you missed part of today's webinar, like Susan had lost audio there for a moment and I think got connected back into the dial-in number, but anything, Susan, that you had missed, you can always check out in our webinar archive. Here is the URL for that. We get every webinar that we do posted in there by the end of the day. So Susan, I'll get you a link to that just in case you did miss anything in the middle there. Anyone else, if you thought today's webinar was useful, you can send out the webinar link to have other people go back and watch it. Or again, if you kind of tuned out for part of it, you can check out the recorded webinar there. If you are using Faster Suite or you do enjoy these webinars, definitely tell your friends. They'll thank you if Faster Suite is saving them a bunch of time and making them a bunch more money, or if these webinars are helpful for your friends that are using Faster Suite and they learn how to do something that they didn't know how to do before, they will definitely thank you. So tell your friends, spread the word. And for anything that you guys need related to Faster Suite, related to Faster Law, you can always contact us at help@fasterlaw. So that is the easiest way to directly get a hold of us. And that's just send us an email. So this is, you could also schedule a time with us through our calendars, like Tony had mentioned before. But help@fasterlaw will send a message directly to our support staff, and the first available there will reach out to you. So I took out the what's coming up slide in this because we actually don't have anything scheduled as of right now. So I think going forward, what we'll probably do is probably a week or two before we do a webinar, we will just put a notice on the ribbon like you guys have probably seen here, this new icon here that says Common Tech Mistakes Made by Law Firms. We will notify you this way of any upcoming webinars, but as of right now, we don't have anything scheduled. We will probably be adopting a more intermittent approach to webinars, just as topics come up or as we have things to cover. So keep an eye out for those notifications on your ribbon up top, and that'll let you know what's coming up. But with that, I haven't seen any other questions come in. So we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks Tony for hosting this today. And today's episode again was episode 14, Common Tech Mistakes Made by Law Firms. We hope you all stay safe out there and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks guys, bye.